In this chapter, we're going to introduce some of the basic ideas of probability. In this lesson, we're going to look at something called the weighted mean.
Alright, hi everybody. So in this video we're going to take a look at something called a weighted mean. Now in a previous video we looked at something called the trimmed mean, and what the trimmed mean was is we took a data set and we looked for values that didn't quite fit, okay, that were outliers. And we would ignore them, but then we would also have to ignore a balancing value here. Weighted mean is a little different here. Weighted mean, and by the way, you're familiar with this. You're very familiar with what a weighted mean is, because this is how your marks have been calculated kind of ever since you got into school. So in a weighted mean scenario here, you've got your data set, but the different values might be awarded different levels, like it says here, different levels of significance. Okay? So for example, your exam marks are worth more than your quizzes, which are typically worth more than the little assignments that you'll get. Okay? So there's this kind of a tier, these tiers to your marks there. So there are a couple of different ways that we calculate a weighted mean. So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples of each so that you see the difference and you can compare how we do it. Okay, so let's take a look at this first question here. And this is a question that's actually kind of should be close to home here. So what we got here, Russ is calculating his final grade. His assignments are worth 15% altogether. His unit exams are also worth 15% altogether. His presentation work is 25% of his mark, and his final is worth 45% of his mark. Now, those marks should all add up to 100% here. So 15 and 15 is going to be 30. 30 and 25 is going to be 55, and 45 is 100. Okay, good. So that means we've covered everything here. Now, Russ got the following marks on his assignments. So what we need to do here, first of all, if we're going to calculate his mark here, is we got to figure out what his assignments mark should be. Now, so he has 80, 65, so we'll do it like this, 80, 65, 85, 70, and 65. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exams here. So his average mark on his assignments here, and I just have to do this on the calculator just off to the side here, is going to be 73. So 73%. He got the following marks on his unit exams, so we got to do his exams here. You got 100 plus 80 plus 88. And there's only 3 of them there. So whoops. So 100 plus 80 plus 88 divided by 3. And so we got 89.3% there. And then, what have you got? He got 85% on his presentation and 95% on his final exam. Okay, so here's how we're going to calculate his final mark. Okay, and his final mark is going to look like it's going to equal this. First of all, we're going to take that 73% and we're going to multiply it by what it's worth. Now, if you think about the way averages work, you add everything up and then you divide. Well, what we're going to kind of do here first is we know that this is worth 15%. So I'm actually going to, in a sense, I'm going to do this division earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what 15% of this is. This mark here, 73, is only worth 15% of the total. So I'm going to do the division right now. I'm going to convert 15% to 0.15, and then I'm going to add that to, well, here we got this 89.3. This is also only worth 15%, so I'm going to convert that 15% to a decimal. I'm going to do the division right there, plus, and then he's got 85% on his presentation. So there's 85%, but the presentation is worth 0.25. And then he got his final's worth 45, and where's his final mark? 90 on his final, so 90%, and that is worth 0.45 of his total. Okay, so now pull out the calculator here. So here we go here. So 73 multiplied by 0.15. So that represents that this 73 is only worth 0.15% of the total. Then we got the 89.3, and that is also worth 15% of the total. His 85 is worth 0.25, 25% of the total. And the 90 is worth 45%. Put that all together, and he's going to get when I round that, 86.1%. So this is one way of coming up with a weighted average. Okay, you get the pieces here. So I had to first of all figure out what the average of his assignments is. I had to figure out what the average of his exams is, and then I take those with the other pieces. I multiply them by their weightings, but in a decimal form. So I'm going to do the division right there. I'm going to convert that percentage to a decimal, then multiply, and then I do the adding at the end. Okay, so now that we've looked at a question where we figured out somebody's mark, we figured out Russ's mark up there, now let's take a look at Betty here. And this is going to reflect some work that we did previously in this course here, where now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a situation here where Betty needs to know what to get on a certain exam to get an average of, what we got here, 86. So Betty wrote 3 tests, each worth 20% of her final grade. And the marks that she got were 75, 82, and 88. What mark will she have to get on her final exam worth 40% to get a final grade of 86? Well, okay, let's just kind of barrel forward here. What would this look like if we were just going to calculate her average here? Well, she got, okay, so her mark here is going to be, well, she got 75%, and that's worth 20% of her mark. So I convert that to the decimal. Then I'm going to add 82%, and that is also 20% of her mark. And then 88%, and that is again 20% of the mark. So I'm going to multiply her mark by the weighting. Then, see, here's the thing. She doesn't know what she has to get on her final. So that's an X. She has no idea. But I know that it's going to be worth 40%. And what I'm hoping here is that this is going to be equal to 86 when this is all done. Well, okay, I'm pretty lazy here, so I'm just going to put this all together. I want to figure out what that is first. So 75 times 0.2 plus 82 times 0.2 plus 88 times 0.2. So altogether, this is going to be 49 plus x times 0.40 equals 86. Well, I want to get what x is, so I've got this extra 49 here that I got to get rid of, so I'm going to subtract that from both sides. So 86 minus 49, this is going to be x times 0.4 is going to equal 37. And now to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by this coefficient right here, by this 0.4. So 37 divided by 0.4 gets me 92.5%. So if she wants to get a final grade of 86%, then that final exam has to be 92.5%. Okay, now let's take a look at a question that basically introduces us to another type of weighted mean here. So determine the arithmetic mean of the following sets of numbers. Now look at this. I've got 17, 17, 17, but like over here I've got this 26, 26, 26, 26, 33, 33, then 36, 36. Like there's repetition here. There's a fair bit of repetition. So what I can do here is I can sidestep some of this repetition by using weights here. So for example, 17 shows up 3 times, 19 shows up once, but 20 shows up twice. 21 shows up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 26 shows up 4 times, 33 shows up twice, and 36 shows up 4 times. So I'm going to create a weighting based on the number of times these data values show up in the set. Now, for me to figure out what the mean is, instead of going 17, 17, 17, I'm just going to go 3 times 17 plus 19 plus 2 times 20 plus 5 times 21 plus 4 times 26 plus 2 times 33 plus 4 times 36. Okay, I don't want to enter those things and keep entering plus when it's the same number over and over again. I'm gonna kind of cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use multiplication to get that faster. Now, the number of times, the number of data items here is what I have to divide by in the denominator. Well, all I have to do is really look up at the weighting here. The weightings give me an indication of the number of times this happens. So, and another way of describing this, by the way, would be to call these frequencies. Okay? Up here, these are the frequencies. The frequencies are the number of times these these data values show up. So down here I went divide by 3 plus 1 for the 19, plus 2 20s, plus 5 21s, plus 4 26s, plus 2 33s, plus 4 36s. So I've got the frequencies frequencies times the data values in the numerator, all added up, and then the sum of the frequencies in the denominator. And I probably should have done this, got this prepped a little earlier here, but that's okay. Plus 2 times 20, plus 5 times 21, plus 4 times 26, plus 2 times 33, plus 4 times 36. And now we divide by the sum of the frequencies, 3 plus 1 plus 2 plus 5 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4. And I get 25.2 to the nearest tenth. And you can see where that works here. It's 25.2. If you look at the data, is going to be over here, but that's because we've got a fair bit more of these larger numbers over there, so it's kind of pulling the mean up to them a little bit further ahead of the middle there. Anyway, that's how you would do that. Okay, let's take a look at another one. It says Liz sells crafts at the craft fair in Edmonton at the Butterdome. And at one fair she sold 5 items at 28, 12 items at 18, 3 items at 23, 6 for 16, 1 for 40, and 2 for 55. Now what would be the mean cost of the items she sold here? Okay, so our mean here, now this would be kind of ridiculous, particularly here with the 12 items, to go 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 12 times. So, and remember, what happens here is this is the data right here. Data. This is the data value. Over here, this is the frequency. Because sometimes what we're going to do here when we do a question like this, I'm actually just going to give you what we call a frequency chart. I'm just going to flat out tell you, here's the data value, here's the number of times it shows up. Here, it's a little bit more subtle, but anyway. So 5 times 28 plus 12 times 18 plus 3 times 23 plus 6 times 16 plus 1 times 40. So that's, I don't really have to write that there. And then plus 2 times 55. And then in the denominator, I add up the frequencies because that will tell me the number of data values that I've got. And so now on my calculator, this is what I enter. So 5 times 28 plus 12 times 18 plus 3 times 23 plus 6 times 16 plus 40 plus 2 times 55 divided by 5 plus 12 plus 3 plus 6 plus 1. Don't forget about the 1 here. I didn't have to write it here because of the product didn't require it, but down here I do. And when all said and done, I get 23.14. So $23.14 is the mean cost that she sells her items for.